the economics of home building in Arlington, most of the current residential infill development, and I think we're talking the suburban residential neighborhoods within the county, tends to be the bigger the better. That's my phrasing, but that's some of the phrasing we got here on this. And as a result, the impact of residential redevelopment on our environment is significant, specifically on our tree canopy and water quality. In addition, there's concern the scale of the new houses changes the character of our neighborhoods. Recognizing current lot coverage and zoning regulations, how would you address mitigating the impact of teardowns and redevelopment?
Well, I have been attending county board meetings for several years now, and this issue comes up generally at least once a year. And the sitting incumbent county board has stated repeatedly that it has no authority to stop the construction of McMansions. There was a modification, I believe, to the zoning ordinance something like 10 years ago, and I believe it increased the amount of setbacks and made other minor modifications to the zoning ordinance. But the current county board stipulates that this is a matter that is essentially governed by the Dillon rule, whereby the General Assembly must approve decisions to change the regulations governing by right development. Now, I simply do not know the law on this subject. I understand it's very complex, but certainly one of my initiatives, if elected to county board, would be to go to the General Assembly and ask for modifications that would increase the setbacks and reduce the building heights that are currently allowed in the county. Does that mean time's up?
1 minute.
Okay, all right. So yeah, I would definitely call for that. One of the new developments that I find particularly galling is a development at the corner of Washington Boulevard and George Mason Drive that was once at least 2 or 3 acres of wood, of pristine wooded area. And that has now basically been totally eliminated. In its place are 3 barn-like structures. They don't even look like houses. I don't even think they qualify for the word McMansion. They're more like barns. And I find this to be utterly obnoxious. Again, I'm not pointing the accusing finger, but I'm saying something's got to be done.
Thank you. Christian.
Sadly, this is something that unites Arlingtonians north, south, east, west. People hate this when they see it going on in their neighborhoods for good reason. It's not just about neighborhood character. That's something that, while very important to a lot of people, if that were it, who knows if we would be having this conversation. But it's also the consequences that we see from this development where infill builders clear cut of trees before they've even thought about what is going to be designed. Even though there are replacement rules, by no means does that compensate for the loss of mature growth on properties. We have stormwater issues due to the lack of impervious surfaces, and let's not forget, this exacerbates our affordability issues in Arlington. So when you think about what's required, a look at the zoning ordinance and figuring out what within the law we can do to reclaim some of the control of what our neighborhoods looks like is absolutely on the agenda. But that's going to be a winding and long process. I'd like to look at what other communities have done, and I've been very interested in an innovative program that they've done in San Francisco. And essentially it's a tear down tax. What they've done, and of course we would need to get authority to do this, but I think there's a way to structure it so that it even meets muster, at least philosophically, in a place like Virginia, where essentially if you were going to build at a higher scale than what existed before, there is a price you pay per bedroom, in the case in San Francisco, essentially changing the economics of what we're seeing. Because understand, this is market-driven activity. You have people willing to spend this money for these size homes, but if you change the market dynamics, then maybe we can regain a little bit of control while we have a comprehensive look at our zoning ordinance to figure out how we tighten up what has been loosened over the years through some actions of our own in Arlington, but mostly through the Commonwealth's being a very business developer friendly community or state.
So if we get some benefits, environmental or otherwise, from density, as Stuart suggested, I think we can sort of agree that these jumbo houses are kind of the junk food of development, right? All bulk and no nutrition. And so I do think this remains a major challenge for our community, and it's a challenge actually that links a lot of constituencies. So when we talk about this new era of Arlington and trying to avoid the temptations to be pitted against one another or balkanized, I think thinking about this particular issue is important because it links advocates for affordability who are concerned about whether the middle class can continue to buy homes and thrive in Arlington. It links historic preservationists and those who want to preserve the character of their neighborhood, and it links those concerned with environmental issues. So as others have noted, this is part informed by the context in which we live. Some of this has to be addressed through partnerships with our state delegates to Richmond. Some of this does have to be addressed in the longer term by our zoning ordinance. One other area that I think is ripe for exploration is looking at the ways in which we make it more difficult to permit, or through permitting or other regulations, to make modest additions to your home. That's one of the things I hear a lot when I talk to folks at their doors about the sort of hoops they have to jump through to add on 1 or 2 extra bedrooms. And I believe that could be tilting the economics in favor of the big developers who will be then sort of raising it to the ground and building a much larger home. If you can make a modest modification and then perhaps sell it, you could be mitigating, I hope, the impact of tearing down trees and other issues surrounding it. So I think that's sort of an interim thing that we might be targeting, a fresh look at those set of regulations, and absolutely looking at the overall zoning ordinance in the longer term.
Well, this is one of those questions when you go last, you really don't have much to say. Because it seems like we're all in agreement about the fact that we don't like seeing these large houses take up the entire lot coverage. You know, being a neighborhoods guy and talking to neighborhoods and so forth, you know, people come in and build on the entire lot, and they build up. And the poor person who has to live next to the house that goes built up usually ends up having a problem with water drainage coming off the house, flooding his basement. Also have storm water issues that we have to deal with. So, you know, we really need to take a look at how we do zoning and lot coverage in this county. And if it takes going to Richmond and getting a better coverage, the ability to not have the people to build on the entire lot, I think we should go ahead and do that. I'm a lawyer by trade, so I know there's some you're going to have to jump through. So if we need to go down and do that, I think we should do that, because it's important that we keep tree canopy, we keep green space in this county. I can attest to the fact, and I live in a historic neighborhood. It's the only historic neighborhood in all of Arlington County, and you can't tear it down. So we have a wonderful neighborhood because we have lots of green space. You can only add on to your house. We have other difficulties because it's historic and you have to jump through a lot of hoops in order to make sure your house stays historic. But it provides the ideal kind of place that we would want to have to live. Have trees, green space, kids playing, and not have houses taking up the entire lot. So I'm for going after and doing the things that are right, because to be quite honest with you, these large houses that are being built on the entire lot, are not very attractive, and they don't blend in very well with the surrounding community.